For more on Zoom, let's bring in Gene Munster of Loup Ventures to react. Gene, you already thought that it was pretty fully valued. So what does Zoom need to do in order for the stock to move higher?
They need to keep the growth rates going at a similar pace or close to a similar pace. And that's simply what it boils down to, Melissa, is this is a growth company. This is a momentum play. I want to quickly articulate that. Dan talked about this. My math is it's trading at 33 times this year's numbers. That compares to Slack at about 20, Microsoft about 10. Blue Jeans, a very small competitor, just got acquired by Verizon for likely around 4 times revenue. So to keep this stock going, you have to justify this gap. And I, over the years, have watched these growth companies. And one thing I've observed is usually making a negative call or avoiding a story because of valuation in a massive growth opportunity, usually that's the wrong call. The right call is to look the other way and own it. But in this case, I'm thinking that that gap is just simply too far. The probability that the growth rates decline measurably in the quarters ahead is high, despite this undeniable truth about remote work. And so I put this in the camp of a great company. The verb Zoom will be around for a long time. The company will be around for a long time. But at a $60 billion valuation, trading at 33 times next year, it's just difficult. There are just so many better places you can have your money.
I get that Zoom has become a verb, and that's really critical to understanding the company and how integral it has become. But history is littered, Gene, as you know, with companies that have become verbs, and now they've been displaced by competitors. And so when you're thinking about Zoom and this tremendous remote work from home sort of trend that's going on, you've also got to think about the Microsofts of the world, the Cisco WebEx, et cetera. Is it your feeling that Zoom has a market share that it is going to, in fact, hold on to?
Yeah, I think they'll continue to grow. So the numbers that we're looking at is that they just reported essentially 300% quarter-over-quarter growth. That compares to WebEx at around 200% and Microsoft Teams around 100%. And the reason, these are for basically the number of meetings, paid meetings that are going on. The reason why that is growing is I think that there is something that is beautiful about the Zoom user interface. Web conferencing has been around for a long time. It's never taken off, in part because of the complexities. Vast difference in terms of what these products look like. So yes, bigger tech companies can replicate this. They can come out with simplified versions of it. But I fundamentally believe is that they have tapped into a sweet spot that I anticipate that Zoom will be around, that other companies will try to streamline, but I think that they will still continue to gain share, and I think the story is still largely fairly or potentially overvalued here.
Karen's got a question for Gene.
Yeah, I got a question. So the quarter ended April. Did they give, on the call yet, I think which just started, did they give numbers for what happened in May, and how did that factor into their outlook for the year?
So haven't seen those. The last numbers that they gave were at the very beginning of May. They reported their April numbers. It wasn't in the press release today, but that was these called 300 million paid business accounts, and that was up from 10 million, or participants, meeting participants, 300 million, up from 10 million. It was just a staggering number. 300 million up from 10 million at the end of December is the last time they reported that. But Karen, to answer your question is, I don't know if they've gotten to that yet.
All right, Gene, we're going to let you go. Thanks so much for joining us. Gene Munster of Loup Ventures. Guy Adami, what's your trade on Zoom?
Hi.
Hi.
Well, it's interesting. So Dick Fosbury, he's the guy, obviously, that created the Fosbury. He revolutionized the high jump, right? But years later, Dwight Stones came around and shattered all his records. But it's still called the Fosbury flop. What's your point, Guy? My point is exactly what Gene just said. Zoom isn't going anywhere. Neither is Dick Fosbury's flop. What's going somewhere is the valuation. And I think Dan nailed it. I mean, I'm surprised it's not lower as well. And recall, we talked about this stock in the fall with you when we were all sitting together when it was an $80 now. I never in my wildest dreams thought it would go to 200. I think you got to figure out where to buy it back. And my sense is you figure out to buy it back in like the 140s, which theoretically should really back and trace back to?
I don't think Dick Fosbury has ever been mentioned on I think this is a historical moment here on this show.
I mean, this is fantastic.
I mean, absolutely.
But Dwight Stones has. Dwight Stones has. He
yes,
watches
you are
the
right.
show, I
yes,
think.
he has been
texted
mentioned on the
us
show
after.
in the past.